echoes in the dust. He wasn't just tearing down buildings. He was tearing down his own soul. What happens when a single conversation forces a man to rebuild the life he abandoned? The city exhaled a plume of gritty dust, a daily ritual that Caleb Vance knew better than his own breath. Each morning, the screech of tortured metal and the percussive roar of falling concrete were his sermon, a brutalist hymn to deconstruction. He moved with an economy born of a decade spent dismantling the skeletons of other people's dreams, his body a well-oiled machine of sinew and resignation. His hands, calloused and permanently stained with the grime of his trade, could tell the difference between load-bearing steel and decorative iron by touch alone, a skill he never wanted and now couldn't forget. He was part of the demolition crew at the old Orpheum Theater, a once grand dame of a building now slated for the grave to make way for another glass and steel monolith that would scrape the indifferent sky. Today's task was the interior, stripping away the last vestiges of its former glory. As he pried a long section of ornate plaster molding from a wall, a cascade of dust and forgotten memories rained down. He caught a piece, its intricate floral pattern miraculously intact. The chalky, cool weight of it in his palm was a jolt, a phantom limb tingling with a sensation had long since amputated. It felt like the clay his grandfather, a stonemason with hands like shovels and a poet's heart, had first pressed into his own small fingers. The memory was a physical blow, winding him. He remembered the smell of wet earth, the sublime joy of coaxing a face, a shape, a story from a lump of nothing. That boy, with his clay-caked fingernails and a universe of possibilities in his head, felt like a stranger from another life, a ghost whose aspirations Caleb was now being paid to pulverize. He stood there for a moment too long, lost in the ruin of the theater and the ruin of himself, the roar of the machinery fading to a dull hum in his ears. That's when he saw her. Lena. She was one of the architects from the new project, a splash of vibrant color against the monochrome palette of destruction. She wasn't looking at the blueprints in her hand or the gaping hole in the roof. She was looking at him, at the piece of plaster in his hand, her gaze not one of pity or impatience, but of an unnerving, intense curiosity. It was a look that didn't just see a worker. It saw a man holding a piece of his own shattered past. For the first time in years, Caleb felt seen, and the sensation was as terrifying as it was profound. He quickly dropped the fragment, the sound of it shattering on the rubble-strewn floor echoing the breaking of the spell. He turned back to his work, the rhythmic swing of his sledgehammer a desperate attempt to drown out the sudden, deafening silence within him. But the image of her inquisitive green eyes, and the ghost of the clay on his hands, refused to be turned to dust. The day's work suddenly felt heavier, each blow against the old walls a strike against a part of himself he thought he had successfully buried long ago. The city's breath was no longer a familiar comfort, but a suffocating reminder of the air. He had forgotten how to truly breathe. A few days later, during a brief lull in the cacophony when the generators were being refueled, Lena approached him. She navigated the treacherous terrain of rebar and broken brick with a surprising grace, her colorful scarf a flag of truce in a war zone. Caleb was sitting on an overturned bucket, methodically cleaning a tool, his focus absolute, a defense mechanism had perfected. He didn't look up, sensing her presence like a change in atmospheric pressure. She stopped a few feet away, not crowding him. She asked about the building, not the new one, but the old one. She wanted to know about the things they were finding, the small histories hidden in the walls. Her voice was calm, without the clipped efficiency he associated with the project managers and engineers. He gave clipped, one-word answers, his vocabulary as dismantled as the structures around him. But she was persistent, not in an annoying way, but with a genuine interest that was disarming. She pointed toward a pile of salvaged oak beams. She mentioned the grain, the hand-hewn marks, talking about the wood as if it were a living thing with a story to tell. He found himself listening, a strange warmth spreading through his chest. Then, she looked at him directly, her green eyes unwavering. She told him she'd seen him with the piece of plaster the other day. She said the way he held it wasn't the way a man holds a piece of trash. It was the way an artist holds a piece of inspiration. The word artist hung in the air between them, alien and explosive. A bitter, rusty laugh escaped Caleb's throat before he could stop it. Artist. The word was a mockery, a cruel joke told in a graveyard of his own making. He told her she was mistaken, that he was just a guy with a hammer, paid to break things, not make them. But his denial was weak, the foundations shaken. She didn't argue. She just smiled, a small, knowing smile that infuriated and intrigued him in equal measure. She said that sometimes the best things are built from the rubble of what came before. And then she walked away, leaving him in a silence more profound than the earlier noise. That evening, he didn't fall onto the couch in a state of exhausted oblivion as usual. He went into his garage, a place he used only for storage, a tomb for his former life. He flicked on the light, illuminating a landscape of dust-shrouded shapes. Under a yellowed tarp was his old potter's wheel. Next to it, on a rickety shelf, were his sculpting tools, sleeping in a leather roll. He ran a finger over a wooden modeling tool, its surface smooth and familiar beneath the thick layer of grime. He could feel the ghost of 1,000 creative impulses thrumming through the wood, a current had cut himself off from. He stood there for a long time, the air thick with the smell of dried clay, turpentine, and regret. The conversation with Lena had been a key, turning a lock in a door he thought he had bricked up forever. He was terrified of what was on the other side, but for the first time, he was even more terrified of never finding out. The transformation wasn't a lightning strike, it was a slow, arduous dawn. Caleb started small, bringing home pieces of the city's detritus, a twisted piece of copper pipe, a gnarled block of oak from the theater, a shard of sea-green glass from a demolished warehouse. In the quiet solitude of his garage, surrounded by the ghosts of his past, he began to work. At first, his hands felt clumsy, brutish, conditioned to destroy, not to create. The frustration was immense. He nearly gave up a dozen times, the familiar voice of cynical resignation whispering that he was a fool, that a man like him couldn't build anything beautiful. But the memory of Lena's unwavering gaze, and the deeper, older memory of his grandfather's patient hands, kept him going. He worked through the nights, the clang of his hammer on metal now a different sound, not of destruction, but of forging. He learned to weld, to coax the rigid materials into fluid, expressive shapes. He wasn't just assembling junk. He was giving the forgotten fragments of the city a new voice, a new story. His sculptures were raw, honest, and deeply personal, each one a conversation between the harshness of the materials and the unexpected tenderness of their forms. He showed Lena a picture of his first completed piece on his phone one day. Her reaction wasn't just polite praise. It was a gasp of genuine awe. She saw the story in it, the pain and the hope he had hammered into the metal. With her encouragement, which felt more like a partnership than patronage, he submitted a piece to a local art show held in a repurposed community center. The night of the opening, Caleb stood awkwardly in the corner of the brightly lit room, feeling more exposed than he ever had on a high steel beam. His sculpture, a soaring wing-like form made of salvaged rebar and polished oak, stood in the center of the room. People were looking at it, talking about it, their faces reflecting a mixture of curiosity and admiration. Then he saw Lena making her way through the small crowd, a radiant smile on her face. She stood beside him, not looking at the sculpture, but at him. She told him it was magnificent. In that moment, it wasn't about the potential sales or the recognition. It was about the simple, profound fact that he had created something. He had taken the rubble of his life and built a testament to his own resilience. A slow, genuine smile spread across Caleb's face, a smile that reached his tired hazel eyes, making them shine with a light he thought had been extinguished forever. He was no longer just a man who tore things down. He was a man who was rebuilding, starting with himself. He had found the echo of his own soul in the dust and given it a new, unbreakable form.